Victoria Pearson, but you can call me V, and I have been a practicing witch for about 25 years now. Usually when I am travelling around, I stick to the UK, and so I can do things like put a spell jar in my car, or have a very non-discreet sigil on my keys, or do lots of other travel protection charms that require ingredients. But very soon, I am going to Hamburg for 3 days, and I want to take a little travel protection charm with me just to keep my energy in the right sort of area, because it has been a long time since I have travelled last. However, I do not want to be bringing lots and lots of stuff that's in my normal witchy kit that is going to make border control go, and what exactly are you up to? And so today I am making a really discreet little travel charm that incorporates a sigil. I'm using air dry clay for it, but you can just use a piece of jewellery that you already have if you want, and then just skip to the ritual part. So let me take you through how I made it. So I started off with some air dry clay. I've got some white air dry clay here, and I gave it a really good knead before I started, but I also then kneaded in a tiny little bit of salt into it as well. Salt is often used for purification, for protection, and sometimes to represent the earth element as well. And you want to be grounded and earthy when you are doing protection kind of magic. It took me a little while to knead it up so that it was just about right, but when I had done that, I started working out my sigil. Now, you don't have to make a sigil for your travel protection charm. You can just use a piece of jewelry that means a lot to you, or that you wear a lot, or that you've had it for a long time, or that was even given to you by somebody that you feel protective, or you feel has protective energy, or even something that represents something that is protective to you, like a snake or a dog or something like that, on a piece of jewelry, or a key ring can be used in this way. I decided that I wanted my jewellery to have a sigil on it because I work with sigils a lot. You can find out how to make a sigil on my channel as well, because I have 2 different videos on how to make a sigil. I would recommend the one that I have done the most recently, because the first one that I did was when I first started doing my channel, and I wasn't very good at filming things then. But basically I made a sigil out of the phrase safe and prosperous travels, because I'm traveling for a bit of business as well. And so I wanted to make sure that I was both safe during my travels, but that also that this trip pays off for me, that it leads to more prosperity for me. I did that using my usual method of removing all repeated letters and vowels, and then corresponding those letters to a number between 1 and 12, and then using a little clock face method. There are lots of different methods to make a sigil, and how you do it exactly is up to you. Once I had played around enough with the sigil and I was happy with how it looked, then I started really carving over it to make it darker, because I thought at first I was going to make a charm about this sort of size, and I was going to use foil to sort of trace over it. But after I'd drawn it, I thought, that's a little bit too big. So I'm probably going to make a much smaller version of it. So I started shaping it into a sort of pendant shape. I wanted it to be basically a circle, but with a little sort of bobble on the top so that I can put a hole through it to put a chain through without it affecting the circle itself. I did that by just using my fingers at first, and then I also got like a lid of something to try and make the circle with it. I then realised that my sigil was going to be far too big to just trace onto my piece of clay, but I didn't want a bigger piece of clay. I liked the size that we were going. If anything, I thought maybe it was a little bit too big, and I think I made it a little bit smaller later. But yeah, there's no wrong way of doing this. You just got to fiddle around until it's something that you are happy with. And so I took quite a long time making the shape that I wanted it to be before I then started to carve on my sigil. And this was the point where I also put the hole in it ready for a D-ring or a chain to go through, so that I can make it into a charm that hangs from a necklace, or make it into a little key ring, which is what I think I'm going to do. And so once I'd made sure that I'd got my hole there, and I'd got rid of any sort of finger marks in there, made it really super smooth, so that when I carved the sigil in again, it would make it really clear. And so I used a clay carving tool for this, but you don't have to. You can use a pen or something like that. I just happen to have a clay carving tool. And then I carefully copied out the shape of my sigil when my clay was not yet dry. It was still very wet, but had dried for about half an hour or so to give it a sort of leather hardness so that I could make the lines on it without dragging the clay along and messing up the thickness of the thing. I decided it was too big at one point as well and made it smaller as well, but eventually we got it to the point where I liked the shape and I thought that the sigil was clear enough for me to be able to see. And so at that point I had to let it thoroughly dry. And that means on both sides as well, because obviously if you've got it laying flat on a plastic surface, it's not able to breathe very well there. It's not going to dry on both sides, and you need it to be 100% dry before you start adding more moisture to it in the form of paint or something like that. And so I had to leave it, I think, all in all, for about 48 hours. Once it had dried completely, I used a nail file to smooth out the edges. You have to do this very gently because air dry clay is very, very soft, especially when it hasn't fully finished drying out yet. I wanted to make sure that it was very, very smooth and that the only marks on it were the ones that I had done intentionally as part of my sigil. And I'd done it deep enough that I was able to sort of sand over the top of it like this with the nail file to keep it smooth but without losing any of those little ridges. It is important, I think, to wear a mask and do this in a ventilated area because I have been told since doing this, actually, that breathing in clay particles while you're sanding it is really not very good for your lungs. I didn't know that, though. I didn't wear a mask, and so hopefully I'm not going to get a lung disease and die or something, because that wouldn't be very protective. Now, it was time to paint this now, and so you can use moon water, you can use storm water, which would sort of be quite angry energy to scare anything away that might want to hurt you. I happen to already have some protection water though, and I can't remember if I've done a video on how to make this or not, but I've got all sorts of things in there, from nettles to pins to claws and all sorts of things in there that make my protection water. And I'm going to use that because it's got some colour to it. It's a little bit dark already, and so I think that that's going to show up really, really nicely. You can just use ordinary paint at this point, and that would be absolutely fine. You could also leave it unpainted if you wanted to, and that would be absolutely fine too. But I wanted to bring out the sigil a little bit, so I used some protection water to colour it. Now, when you're working with air dry clay, it is important that you don't make it too wet when you're working with it, or the whole thing is just going to smush into a mushy mess and you will have nothing to show for all your hard work. So use the very barest minimum amount of paint or water or whatever you're using to stain it, so that the moisture doesn't get too far into the charm and leave you lots and lots of drying time again. Whenever you've done a little layer of this with the protection water, you're going to have to leave it, let it dry completely, and then do the next layer. When you have enough layers on that you feel happy with it and that you are able to see your sigil clearly, you can then call that done. If you would like to, you can then anoint it with a little bit of protection oil or some other kind of oil of some kind, but it's really, really important that you let it dry completely first. If you try to seal this with varnish or oil before it is ready, before it is dry, it is going to blister and peel and start going all scabby, and it will not look very nice anymore, and it will flake off and make a right mess in your handbag or wherever it is that you keep your keys. And because I mixed some salt into my dough, when it dries it sometimes gets a little bit textury on top of it, and so once I had dried it all, I then filed it with my nail file again, just because I like it to feel super smooth, and because the edge of the shape just looked a little bit uneven. I wanted to make sure that that bit was done, and any sort of fingernail prints that I'd got in it were gone, and that it was all looking as smooth and nice as it could be. Now it's time to charge it up, and there are lots of different ways that you can do this, but I did it with just stuff that I had in my house. So I started off with some drawing pins, and in working anti-clockwise, I put the drawing pins around the charm with the pointed tips facing outwards. This is to block out any negative energy that might want to be around me, anything that might harm me, anything that might frighten me. We're giving it a strong go away message. And so that's the whole thing that we're doing with this charm, is it's all about repelling anything that is negative energy. I chose to use the red tipped drawing pins for these, but you don't have to. You can use any kind of needles, pins, nails, anything spiky. You can even use brambles, nettles, anything like that. It's just to represent a protective barrier around you. After I had done that, I got some incense ashes from some previous workings that I was doing, and I used that as a barrier as well. I used my little metal disc that I burn the incense on as a little sort of handle for it, and I just started placing it all the way around my pins, and so it's like a secondary layer of protection around the first. Once that layer was done, I did a third and final layer, which I made a mixture of table salt and black pepper for. But you can use other herbs and spices as well that match your correspondences. Salt is very purifying, very protective. Pepper is very irritant, is to send things like moving away from you, to repel things from you. And so that was sort of my third layer. I like things to be in threes in my magic. It just feels right. So I've got my charm in the center there, my pins of protection, then I've got my ashes, and then I have got my salt and pepper mix. And I left that on my desk, which is right next to a window with the curtains open, for a little while until we had had a full moon. For me, that was 3 days because I timed making this badly. But then it is ready to wear and protect you on your travels. I hope that you enjoyed making that little witchy charm with me. I'm thinking that I might use it as a keyring rather than a pendant, but I haven't decided yet. I like the colour that it is, I like the look of it, but again, you can use your colours to make correspondences and make it for whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a travel or protection charm. Join me on Monday for my next vlog, 6 a.m. UK time, where I think I'm going to be showing you what I'm packing to take to Hamburg with me. It's going to include quite a lot of weird little accessibility aids that I use to keep my chronic pain at bay while I'm going to be on my feet a lot. But I plan to show you that next week, and then the week after, hopefully, I will get to show you some of the trick. I'm very, very excited for it. So join me on Monday for that. But if you can't wait until then to see me again, even while I'm away, I will still be here every single morning in your shorts, taking a great big deep breath, letting you know what I'm grateful for. Love when you join in with that, because the little things that make you happy make me so happy. So like and subscribe, or don't, I'm not your mum. But either way, you have yourself a beautiful week.